The manager looked down at the old man, then crushed his papers beneath her heel. What she didn't know, what no one in that Chicago bank could imagine, was that the nobody they were throwing out the door held the key to a $3 billion deal. But this story isn't just about money. It's about dignity, about how a single act of arrogance can expose the truth of who we are, and how grace can turn humiliation into justice. Stay until the end, because when this man returns, he doesn't come back for revenge. He comes back to remind the world what respect really means. Welcome to Golden Tales, where every story shines a light on the value of kindness and the quiet power of those the world overlooks. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if you believe that no one is ever too small to teach a lesson that changes everything, hit the like button, subscribe, and let this story speak to your heart. On a cold Monday morning in downtown Chicago, when the wind rushed through the loop like a stern teacher late for class, an elderly man named Elijah Brooks adjusted his wool cap and stood beneath the shadow of a glass and steel bank tower. He carried a weathered manila folder pressed to his chest, papers inside soft at the edges from years of being handled and saved, a past wrapped in paper. He looked like someone the city had passed 1,000 times without truly seeing. Brown wool coat, careful shoes shined the night before, eyes holding the deep patience of a long life. He took one slow breath and stepped through the rotating doors into the lobby. Inside, everything gleamed, chrome, marble, the light of digital tickers sliding across the wall as if money itself whispered in an endless private language. A receptionist smiled mechanically. The line of customers looked like a parade of winter coats. Beyond them, a glass-paneled office held a manager's desk, ferns too green to be real, a crystal award the size of a fist. Elijah took his place in line and kept his folder close. He had come representing someone far more powerful than he appeared. But he did not come to flash a name or fling authority. He had come to witness something old Chicago knows but often forgets: how a city treats a person it does not need. When it was his turn, he offered the smallest smile to the teller. "Good morning," he said softly. "I'm hoping to speak with someone about corporate accounts, extended services, and, he patted the folder. "Deposits on a large scale." The teller flicked her eyes up and down, glanced at the folder, and swallowed a short laugh that didn't quite escape. "For corporate accounts, you'll need to speak to a manager. Do you have an appointment?" "I don't," Elijah said. "But I have documentation. My son asked me to." "Have a seat." She pointed to a cluster of sculptural chairs that looked modern and felt like waiting. The bank manager saw him before he sat. Amanda Whitfield was mid-40s, precise blonde bob, jacket tailored to a sharp V, nails that matched her lipstick. A kind of red that suggested nothing in the world happened unless she approved. She stepped out of her glass office as if a stage cue had been given. "Sir," she said, polite but chilly, "corporate services are appointment only. We don't provide consulting without one." "I understand," Elijah replied. "My son and he sent me." "What kind of business is this?" she asked, eyes skimming his coat and scuffed folder. The pause before business carried a meaning only the quietest rooms hear. The air around them straightened its back and waited. "Investment partnerships," Elijah said. "Real estate trusts. Long-horizon vehicles. I have an outline." He opened the folder, careful hands lifting the pages. The top sheet bore a letterhead, Brooks Meridian Holdings. Beneath it, a brief exploratory assessment for institutional banking relationship, Chicago region. Amanda's expression didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened. "Sir, you can submit those online. We don't accept cold walk-ins for this level of conversation." "They told me a person's experience here matters," Elijah said gently. "Not a portal." "They?" Amanda repeated, with a smile that hummed like fluorescent lights. "Who are they?" "My son," he said. "He's..." From the line, A young man in a puffer jacket snorted. The teller bit back her smile again. The guard by the door shifted his weight. "Sir," Amanda said, "I run a busy branch. I can't." She made a small circling motion with her hand, as if trying to swirl him out of the room. "If you leave your email, someone will contact you within 6 to 8 weeks. I waited 81 years to become patient," Elijah said, knuckles white on the folder. 6 weeks is not the kind of patience we're talking about. He stepped forward, too close for her taste. She instinctively stepped back. He set the folder on the counter. The papers slid a little, soft edges whispering against marble like an old hymn. Amanda's lips thinned. She placed a manicured finger on the folder and pushed it gently back toward him. "Sir, that's not appropriate here." His hand trembled. Not with anger. He had learned decades ago that anger was a storm that never paid his rent, but with the strain of being both polite and unyielding. "I was asked to speak, not to be spoken for." Something in the room tightened. The guard took 2 slow steps closer, not menacing, simply present like a locked door. The receptionist pivoted in her seat. The tickers on the wall kept sliding on, the world counting what it could count. "Listen," Amanda said, palms open, as if reasoning with a child crossing a street wrong. "This isn't the place, and I'm not the person. Please, submit online, or have your son call." "What would you say," Elijah asked, "if my son walked in wearing this coat?" Her smile showed 2 perfect teeth. "I'd tell him the same thing." He nodded slowly. "I believe you would." He lifted the folder again, but the papers slipped as if the moment itself wanted to fall. A few sheets fanned out and drifted down. Amanda rolled her eyes, an exquisite performance of inconvenience. She made a small exhale that carried a whole life of judgments. Then, quiet as a candle going out, she extended the toe of her heel and pressed down on one of the pages to stop it from sliding farther. It was an easy, thoughtless motion, a fraction of a second. But the room felt it. Elijah felt it. The paper crinkled under the leather, the corner grinding like a leaf under a boot. For a heartbeat, she kept her toe there. Then she realized she had done it, and she lifted her foot. But too late. The gesture had already said everything words were afraid of saying. Elijah bent slowly, the joints in his knees sounding like winter branches, and collected the pages. 1, 2, 3, smoothing them with his palm. He did not look up. He did not say a word. But every breath he took filled the bank with the sound of 1,000 small humiliations. In the line, a woman in a postal uniform shifted forward, eyes troubled. "Ma'am," she said to Amanda, almost whispering. "Maybe just hear him out." Amanda didn't turn. "Security," she said. "Please assist our guest back to the seating area." Or the door. The guard approached with practiced calm. "Sir," he said, neutral as a bench, "we'll have to ask you to step aside." Elijah stood, the folder pressed against his chest again like a shield that remembered being a shield. He nodded to the guard. He nodded to the postal worker. Then he looked at Amanda. His eyes were not pleading, not wet. They were simply steady. "Tell your board," he said softly, "that a very large conversation has ended before it began." Amanda tilted her head. "I'll be sure to pass along your message." Elijah did not argue. He turned, walking with the careful dignity of a man who once marched across bridges for a vote and now marched out of a bank for the dignity he'd carried all his life. The guard opened the door. Winter reached in and touched his face. Elijah stepped into it the way elders always have, like a truth you can't ignore. 3 miles away, on the 34th floor of a building that faced the river, Marcus Brooks stared at his phone. He was a young man by corporate standards, late 30s, an engineer's patience in his eyes, and the kind of calm you only earn after losing things early and learning not to break. On his desk was a photo. Elijah holding a wooden plane in a South Side garage, sawdust in his hair, grinning like he had invented the sun. When the phone finally buzzed, Marcus answered in half a ring. "Hey, Pop." A silence, and then Elijah's voice. "I went like you asked me to. I was polite like your mother taught me. I let the city talk the way it talks when it thinks you have nothing to teach it." "Tell me," Marcus said. "They stepped on the paper, son." Marcus closed his eyes. In all the scenarios he had run, all the probability trees of how people behave when they think power looks like a suit, he had not imagined the heel. And yet he had, because he knew the world. "Thank you, Pop," he said. "Come on up here. Warm your hands. I'll make coffee." "Don't make anything on my account," Elijah said. But he was already picturing the mug his son kept for him. The one with chipped blue glaze and a handle big enough for his old knuckles. "You know what to do." "I do," Marcus said. He hung up, and his face changed shape. Not angrier, not colder. Simply certain. He emailed the bank's regional head, the one who had been courting a partnership with Brooks Meridian Holdings. A partnership rumored to run into the billions, with infrastructure bonds and community reinvestment agreements and advisory layers that made lawyers happy. He informed them, with perfect courtesy, that Brooks Meridian would be halting evaluations with immediate effect. He attached a brief summary of what had happened, stripped of adjectives and rich with facts. Then he sent a second note, this one to his own team. Pull the recording. He'd had his father wear a small button camera, not to set a trap, but because his father had taught him to document the truth when the truth refused to sign for the package. He didn't plan to go public. Marcus didn't believe in shaming as a first language, but he believed in evidence. He believed in starting where there was ground. By the time Elijah reached the 34th floor and wrapped his hands around the blue mug, the regional head had called twice. Marcus didn't answer the first time. He didn't answer the second. "Son," Elijah said finally, "I don't need nobody to lose a job over me. I don't want the Lord grabbing nobody by the collar on my account." "We're not in the collar-grabbing business," Marcus said. "We're in the mirror business." Elijah smiled, low and warm. "Then hold it steady." The next morning, snow dusted the sidewalks in a fine lace. At 9 exactly, the rotating doors of the bank parted again. The receptionist looked up, and everything paused the way it does when a message enters a room. Elijah walked in first, wearing the same coat, the same cap, the same slow breath. But he did not walk alone. 2 attorneys followed him, not the kind that swagger, but the kind whose silence sounds expensive. A communications director carried a slim case, and behind them came Marcus, in jeans, a dark sweater, and a pea coat. His eyes were kind. His posture was not negotiable. Customers took a breath as if a weather front had arrived. The guard straightened. The teller's fingers stopped over her keyboard. Amanda stepped out of her glass office with a greeting poised on her lips that turned into, "Can I help you?" and then melted into something else when she saw Elijah in the lead. Elijah didn't speak. He looked at her with the unhurried gaze of old men who have had their say countless times and don't need to raise their voice to be heard. Marcus stepped forward and set a folder on the counter. The logo on the cover, Brooks Meridian Holdings, caught the overhead light. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Marcus Brooks. I'm here for a very brief meeting." Amanda blinked. Took her a moment to place the name. When she did, the color in her cheeks cooled. "Mr. Brooks, of course. Please, my office." "Here is fine," Marcus said, not unkindly. "My father prefers clear rooms." The attorneys withdrew documents. The comms director remained still. No cameras, no declarations. "Not yet." Marcus spoke in a steady tone that traveled easily to every corner of the lobby. "Yesterday, this branch had an encounter with my father, Elijah Brooks," he said. "He came with documentation at my request. He was denied a simple courtesy, to be treated like a person whose time and dignity have value." Someone near the back whispered, "That's his dad." The postal worker from yesterday pulled the brim of her cap down and looked at Amanda with a regret that was heavier than anger. "We won't be proceeding," Marcus continued. "Not because of money. Because money is not the first thing we count." Amanda found her voice. "Mr. Brooks, I regret if—" He lifted a hand gently. "I'm not here to punish. I'm here to say this. The way we treat the people we think can't help us is the first line of our business plan. And that line is either a promise or a lie. He turned to Elijah. Pop, would you like to sit? Elijah hesitated, then nodded. Marcus pulled a chair for him, simple, respectful. The attorneys placed the documents on the table. A formal notice pausing all ongoing discussions, a request for the bank's own internal review process, and a draft of a community commitment clause Brooks Meridian required of any institutional partner. Apprenticeships on the South Side, small business microlending, fee waivers for senior citizens and veterans, financial literacy sessions at public schools. A mirror, not a bat. Amanda stared at the documents. She saw the headline that could have been. She saw the business that would not be. A flicker in her eyes suggested something human. Fear, yes, but also an uncertain grief for the version of herself who had once meant to be kinder. I will, she said, and then started again. I am deeply sorry, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Elijah Brooks. I was wrong. Elijah's smile creased every year of his life. You got a lot of right left in you, he said softly. That's the good news. A murmur moved through the lobby. People looked at one another the way classrooms look at each other after a teacher says the answer they were too shy to say first. A regional executive arrived within minutes. Breathless, coat still open. Apologies lined up like dominoes. He ushered Marcus and Elijah and the attorneys into a conference room. The door stayed propped open. Not because anyone demanded it, but because that seemed like the way the morning wanted to be. There were formalities, of course. Apologies that had to be said officially, not just emotionally. Commitments that had to be put in writing. The bank agreed to a full review, policies, training, the small ways culture tells you who belongs. They asked if they could resume the partnership after the review. Marcus said not yet. Trust takes longer to build than a wire transfer. But in that room, something else happened that did not go into a press release. Amanda asked to speak. She didn't look at the attorneys. She looked at Elijah. I grew up on the West Side, she said, voice steady but tender. My mother worked 2 jobs. I promised myself I would get to a place where people spoke to me with respect. She paused. Somewhere on the way, I learned the wrong lessons. I'm sorry for stepping on your paper. I don't know why that's the part that's burning my face. But it is. Elijah chuckled, a sound like warm wood. Because your soul knows paper is people sometimes. The room exhaled. Amanda swallowed and nodded. I'd like to do more than apologize. I'd like to volunteer for whatever community work your firm sponsors. Not as a condition, as penance. No, she corrected herself. As practice. Marcus watched his father. Elijah didn't rush in. He let the silence tend itself, the way gardeners let a snowbank melt the way it needs to. Then he spoke. I don't believe in public hangings, he said. Too much history in this country of ropes and crowds. I believe in public reckonings. That's different. A reckoning is the day you face the person you lied to and say, I know what I did. A reckoning is the day you put your hands where they can do the opposite. Amanda nodded again. Tears brightened but did not fall. She sat straighter. When they emerged from the conference room, the lobby felt warmer than the bank's thermostat allowed. The postal worker had waited, though her shift had long begun without her. The guard stood near the door with a look on his face that said he had spent the last half hour remembering his own grandfather and the way he held receipts like they were letters from the government. Marcus turned to the small knot of customers who remained. He did not intend to make a speech, but the city asked him to, in the particular way Chicago asks, by putting people in a circle and letting the snow fall outside like an audience. My father, he said, has been showing this town how to act since before I could spell it. Sometimes the world forgets the lesson. Sometimes we do too. When that happens, we don't need revenge. We need remembering. He put a hand on Elijah's shoulder. This is Mr. Elijah Brooks. He taught me that wealth is not bigger numbers, it's larger mercy. And that dignity is the only account that pays interest forever. It should have been the end. It felt like one. A soft fade to a skyline, a saxophone somewhere under the L tracks. But cities like to finish their stories their own way. Someone had texted a cousin who knew a reporter. By early afternoon, a local news team had gathered outside. The story traveled, the way good bread does when the smell reaches the hallway. When they asked for an interview, Elijah hesitated. He had not come to be famous. He had come to be treated like a person on a Tuesday morning. "Say what you always say, Pop," Marcus whispered. Elijah nodded and faced the camera. Snowflakes landed on his cap and lingered as if even they wanted to listen. "I'm not here to get anybody fired," he said. "I'm here to remind us what we are. I'm a black man from Chicago. This city taught me to line up early and keep my chin warm in the wind. It taught me to step back when a train is coming and to step forward when a man needs help. Somewhere along the way, we let the money do the talking for us. But money don't know our names. People do. If you're counting, count hearts first." The reporter said nothing for a beat, which is the highest compliment a reporter can give. Then she asked, "What happens now?" "Now?" Elijah smiled. "Now we practice." In the days that followed, the story became more than a headline. The bank announced a review and invited community groups to the table. They created a senior first service line twice a week, trained staff to begin with dignity and end with it too, and stuck a little sign near the entrance that read, "Bring your questions. You are not an interruption." Amanda didn't lose her job. Not because the attorneys couldn't make that happen, but because Elijah asked them not to. "A lesson is a seed," he said. "It ought to be planted where it can grow." She attended Saturday workshops on the South Side, not as a sponsor but as a student. Budgeting classes held in church basements that smelled like coffee and varnish, where people counted bills on tables and laughed when the math surprised them. She sat in the back and took notes and, once in a while, looked at her shoes as if making sure they weren't standing on anybody's paper. Marcus didn't return to the partnership. He didn't need to. Something better than a deal had been brokered. A memory the city could point to and say, "We were good that day." Brooks Meridian partnered with a community bank with fewer floors and a better lobby feeling. They wrote clauses as if they were poems, lines about apprenticeships, school visits, microloans, and taped them to the office wall like commandments. As for Elijah, he did what elders do when they win. He went home. He scrubbed his blue mug and hung his coat and sat by the window where the light poured in like an old friend. He opened his folder. He smoothed each page the way he had smoothed 1,000 papers in his life. Report cards, union notices, pay stubs, birth certificates, letters his late wife had written in the lilting script that refused to fade even as the ink did. He took out a pen and wrote on the last page, "Today they saw us. Today we saw them. We will try again tomorrow." He closed the folder and leaned back, listening to the city hum. Far off, a train moaned across the tracks, a low animal sound that always made him think of long journeys that finally find their destination. His phone buzzed. It was a message from the postal worker. "Mr. Brooks, I wanted to say thank you. I didn't speak up loud enough yesterday. I will tomorrow." Elijah smiled and typed with careful thumbs. Tomorrow is a good day to start. The wind rattled the window softly. Snow feathered the street. Somewhere downtown, the rotating doors of a bank made their quiet circles, welcoming and releasing, as if practicing the art of letting people in. And if you had been standing on that sidewalk, if you had looked up just then, you might have seen an old man in a wool cap lift his palm and bless the city that had tried to forget him and then remembered. Because in Chicago, the city of shoulders, sometimes the lesson arrives with a heel on paper, and sometimes it leaves with a hand lifting a page, smoothing it flat again, ready to be read aloud. You never know who you're walking past, which is another way of saying, walk past as if every stranger carries a folder full of the rest of your life. And if you need to count, count hearts first. The interest rate is miraculous.